Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Steve from Harbor Marketing Agency. And in this video, I want to talk about the state of the craft beer industry in 2026. The Brewers Association reported that in 2025, 268 new breweries opened and 434 breweries closed. So that makes it the second consecutive year that there were more closings than openings in the craft beer space. So in this video, I'm going to dive into my thoughts on why I think that is and what craft breweries can do about it to still succeed and thrive in this shifting brewery landscape. So let's dive in. So I think it's very difficult to isolate one main factor as the be all end all cause for all the challenges that people in the craft beer space are experiencing. But just to name a few, shifting consumer behavior is the first one that comes to mind. I think a lot of people used to drink and now they either don't drink at all or drink a little bit less. People used to go into tap rooms and they would drink 5 or 6 beers, and nowadays that number might be 2 or 3. On top of that, as that consumer behavior has shifted, you're seeing a lot of alternatives enter the market. So, a lot of non alcoholic beer brands, a lot of THC products that weren't available 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of ready to drink beverages, so the White Claws and the Trulies of the world. And that overall has just increased competition in a space where demand was already declining for craft beer. The next thing that comes to mind is market saturation. So again, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the playbook to scale a craft beer brand was open a production facility and basically land a bunch of accounts, try to get on shelf space in liquor stores and grocery stores, wherever you could distribute your beer, and try to scale that way. As the space became more and more saturated, the competition on shelf space became pretty high. So it became very difficult for each individual brewery to push the volume they needed to make that distribution sales channel profitable. And so that created another issue for breweries where I think nowadays you're seeing a lot of breweries are kind of scrambling to figure out how to make their business profitable. And so they're shifting from the distribution playbook to a taproom playbook. The issue is that a lot of breweries did not set up their space to be taproom first. So a lot of production facilities are in more industrial B or C real estate areas of town, and then they just have a taproom attached to their production facility. And they didn't really take into consideration the amount of foot traffic or really any factors involving location when they were opening that brewery space. So they're stuck in a spot now where they need to drive traffic to the tap room in order to make the business profitable, but they're already starting from behind from a location standpoint. So that's another issue that I think a lot of breweries are facing. Now, I could also mention interest rates, operating in a 3 tier system, and so on. All that to say, people in the craft beer space are operating a very capital intensive business model in a world with high competition and decreasing demand. Now, does this mean that breweries can't succeed in 2026? Absolutely not. However, I think the playbook has definitely changed. So here's my take on how breweries can still succeed and thrive in 2026, even with everything going on in the market. So, my first take here is I think breweries are right to focus on the taproom model. Even if you're not in the best real estate location, I think that is a challenge that you can overcome. However, you really need to start focusing on your brand identity. This is something that I think a lot of breweries sort of knew before, but in today's landscape, you really need to nail this. There's something called the death of the middle in the hospitality space. And basically, what that means is that as consumers are having less spending power due to things like inflation, they're either looking for a high end, unique luxury experience or they're looking for really fast and inexpensive options. And that middle area is where a lot of brands are dying in the hospitality space. I think a lot of breweries are currently in that middle area, and you need to be able to shift to more of that higher end area. That doesn't mean that you need to be super luxury. What I think that means is that you need to have a truly unique, differentiated experience from all the other breweries in town. I'm going to give you an example of this. So, there's a restaurant in Baltimore called Johnny Rad's Pizza Tavern. And if you walk into Johnny Rad's, you can instantly grasp what their brand identity is. There are skateboards everywhere hung up on the walls. They never have sports on TV, they only have skateboarding videos. The staff at Johnny Rad, some of them are actual professional skateboarders. and the food is really good, and they have a good drink selection. But my wife and I love it because it's such a cool, unique experience, and you know exactly what the brand stands for. Now, the interesting thing about Johnny Rad's, I love it. I used to skateboard as a kid. I still follow skateboarding culture. And so there's sort of an emotional connection that I have with that type of environment. My mom, however, would hate Johnny Rad's. My mom is a little bit more proper and high end. She doesn't really resonate with skateboarding culture. So she would walk into Johnny Rad's and totally not be into the experience at all. And that is exactly what you want from a brand identity standpoint. It should actually be a little bit polarizing. That's how you actually build sort of a loyal cult like following. And so I think breweries need to figure out what that is for their brands and really lean into that. Everything from how the taproom is laid out to the branding online, every single way that you present your brand online, that is how you differentiate yourself. It's not going to be the beer at this point in time because, again, everybody is making good beer. The market is super saturated. That can't be the differentiating factor that separates your brewery from all the competition out there. There needs to be something from a branding and storytelling standpoint that makes you unique, and you need to plant your flag in the ground and say, this is who our brewery is for, and this is who our brewery is not for. And when you can do that, you're going to find that you have a ton of people in your area that really resonate with that brand and storytelling, and a ton of people that don't, and that's okay. So that's my first tip on making the tap room successful. Avoid just being another brewery that people can choose from among the many others that they probably can choose from in town. Set yourself up so that you are truly differentiated. So once you've got the branding down, the next thing to focus on is the actual tap room experience beyond the brand. So I think a lot of tap rooms out there, you go in and it's all about the beer. And of course, you're a brewery, it should be about the beer. But again, customers are really looking for the full picture nowadays. And the craft beer craze, unfortunately, just isn't what it used to be back in the day. So if you want to attract a larger crowd to your brewery, a broader audience, then you need to offer the full experience, which includes food. And the mistake I see a lot of breweries making out there is that they kind of offer food just to check the box of having food. So they'll have like a microwave oven where they just throw a frozen pizza into it and then they give their customers frozen pizza. That's great. And it does add to the experience. But I think if you really want to be successful, food needs to be an integral part of the customer experience, meaning you need to put as much effort and thought into your food offerings as you do your beer. So your food has to be really good and it has to be something that people actually get excited about. If you can do that successfully, you're going to find that more customers come in the door because you've created a more appealing environment for people to come and hang out at. And you're going to find that people stay longer because they don't have to just go and have a beer or two and then they get hungry and they have to go somewhere else. You will now be the go-to spot that people have dinner at, stay all night at, and stay for a longer period of time and enjoy their experience. So I do believe that this is very important. And yes, I do understand this is not doable for a lot of breweries. I realize that this is very capital intensive. And so if you can't do this, then you can continue doing the food truck route and try to do everything else that I'm checking off in this list. But I do think that long term, this is something you should be thinking about. The next thing I would mention from taproom experience is really just the little things that people notice when they go and visit a brewery or a restaurant. So just to name a few, things like purse hooks. Do you have purse hooks on the bar? Do you have purse hooks at the table so that women have a place to put their purse? Is the music too loud or is it too low? Is the lighting good? Is that setting a nice ambiance for people? Is it too bright? Is it like an office setting or is it too low and people can't really see? Or are you setting the mood right for people to come and have a nice night out or spend a nice afternoon? Is the temperature comfortable? Is it too cold in the tap room? Is it too hot? Is the seating comfortable? So, do you have a metal bar stool without a back to it that people can't really sit in for more than an hour? Or do you have a nice cushioned bar stool with a back to it that people feel comfortable hanging out at for 2 or 3 hours? All of these little things add up and make a more comfortable experience for your guests. The third point on taproom experience is I found that just from working with a lot of our brewery clients, more unique weekly events tend to perform a lot better than just the generic bland events. So I see a lot of breweries doing things like just general trivia or open mic nights, and those are fine. They can attract a decent crowd, but the events that are more successful are more niche and more unique. So, for example, things like 80s trivia night, things like if you've seen the lectures on tap trend happening, where a professor comes and gives a lecture on a specific subject matter and it draws a crowd of people who are interested in basically hanging out in the tap room, drinking some beer, and listening to a lecture. Pitch a Friend is a new trending type of event that's happening across bars and restaurants and breweries across the nation right now, where basically people will bring their single friend and get up on the mic and pitch them to the audience as someone who would be good to date. So unique events like that aren't happening in every single restaurant across your town or across your city, those are the types of events that tend to be a little bit more successful and draw a larger crowd. If you're just doing another general trivia night, then you're competing with every other trivia night in your city. But if you're doing those more niche, unique events, those are the types of events that actually stand out. And I think you'll have more success with those. So that about sums up my take on how you can optimize the taproom side of things. I do want to touch on distribution. So if distribution is a part of your playbook in 2026 and you're looking to grow your distribution sales, my recommendation here would be don't overexpand on the distribution side of things. Instead, dominate your local market and make sure that everybody in your local area use your beer as the go-to beer for that space. I can actually tell a story about this from the potato chip industry that experienced something not too dissimilar to what the craft beer industry is going through right now in the 1960s. So, around the year 1962, there were 900 local and regional potato chip companies across the United States. And Lay's came in and basically started buying everybody up. They experienced their own set of headwinds, and by about 1977, Lay's basically bought everybody up except for a handful of brands that were able to compete with Lay's and still expand and grow in their local markets. So some of those brands were Utz and Cape Cod, and there were a handful of others. But the main thing that all of those brands that were able to survive that period of market consolidation had in common was that they dominated their local and regional markets. They didn't try to overexpand and be everything to everybody. Utz, for example, is from, I believe, Pennsylvania, and they dominated Pennsylvania and Maryland, and their entire brand and their messaging was centered around the culture in those areas. So people in those areas looked at them as the go-to potato chip for that geographic region, and they continued to choose them over Lay's. So I think that's something that breweries need to think about in today's landscape, where there's a lot of market consolidation, you're competing with bigger brands. If you're trying to expand through your distribution footprint, overexpansion is oftentimes going to do more harm than good because you're getting further and further away from your core audience the further out you expand from your sphere of influence geographically. So what I would do is go deep in your local market rather than going wide in markets that you really haven't tapped into yet. My final note for what breweries can do to increase their revenue and thrive in 2026 and beyond is take a serious look at advertising and your digital footprint. It is funny, I've worked in a variety of industries, and every other business out there just knows that they have to advertise and they have to market themselves and that their digital presence is important to drive revenue online. And for some reason in the craft beer space, people don't take it quite as seriously. So, this is me telling you that if you want to continue to scale and thrive in 2026, you need to make sure that you have a really good website. You need to make sure that your social media presence is on point. You need to make sure that you're doing email marketing and SMS. You need to make sure that you're advertising and you're getting in front of new customers and reminding existing customers to come back into the tap room and to purchase your beer. So fix your website, make sure that you're posting content showing off the vibe in the tap room, and get a good Facebook and Instagram advertising strategy in place. If you can do that and you do all the other things that I mentioned, you're going to find that more customers come into the tap room. You're going to find that existing customers come back more regularly. You're going to get more private events, which I think is another really important way to drive revenue in the tap room and make sure that you're filling up some of the potential slower days in advance. So all of those things are predicated on the fact that you have a good advertising strategy in place and a strong online footprint. Those are my overall thoughts on how breweries can survive and thrive in the 2026 craft beer landscape. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you think I missed anything. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I would love to have a conversation about it. And if you're a craft brewery and you're looking for help with your online marketing, feel free to reach out to us at harbormarketingagency.com. We work with breweries and we help them to get more butts and seats in the tap room. Reach out to us, harbormarketingagency.com, book a call. We would love to chat. Thanks so much.